Good evening, everyone. Nifty at 24,600, and today we'll be discussing about a lot of stocks in the banking sector: SBI, ICICI Bank, HDFC, and many more stocks. And to discuss and give you more insights about this, we have a SEBI-registered research analyst, Mr. Arjit. Arjit, thank you so much for joining us, and let's get started.
Thank you so much for having me. And let's quickly come down to what's really happening in the market today. Nifty on an awesome rally closed with gains of 0.87%, almost 1% gains, 211 points gain with and closed at 24,576 with an intraday high of 24,600. Sensex as well closed with gains of almost 1%, almost 750 points rally, closed at 79,273. Now, we've seen that this rally was there yesterday as well. In yesterday's trading session on Monday, we saw that there was a good rally, although we saw an intraday dip, but still we saw a good rally in yesterday's session as well. So, what's really happening in the market? See, we've been giving positive close in the market from past 7 sessions now. Today was the seventh session when we gave a good positive rally in the market. And somewhere now it is time for all of the retailers, for all of the market participants to realize that market is now slowly pricing in the uncertainty that is there in overall globally. Earlier we used to react to maybe a small a negative news trigger, maybe from the US protests, or maybe from Iran, or maybe some missiles coming out of Iran to the neighboring countries. But now if you realize, even if the war is still going on, there's no major news around it. Everything is coming back to normal. Earlier in March, we were like, there was a huge LPG crisis. Now, if you just look around your restaurants, look around the regular gas supply, everything is almost back to normal. In March second week, I remember there was a huge panic around people for petrol. They were like, "यार petrol pump पे petrol नहीं मिलेगा, diesel नहीं मिलेगा." They used to rush to their petrol station and get their cars or bikes refueled. But now all of that panic is also not there in the market, nowhere to be seen. So now you can understand, even from the stock market, from looking around your, let's say, your day-to-day life, you can see that the uncertainty is now coming down. People are not panicking, thus the market is also not panicking. That is why we are seeing a huge rally. If we just quickly zoom out on our chart, we'll see that we have come up from 22,200 on 2nd of April. That was our lowest level intraday. No, I guess the lowest intraday level was 22,187, 182. That was our lowest level. And from that, we are now almost 2,500 points above from our all time low. So this means that the worst is definitely over. Now we have to look out for the upcoming trigger that might maybe lead the market to 25,000, or maybe some of the events that might not let the market touch 25,000 or stay above 25,000. Right? So the things that we used to look out for, that has changed. The impact that those news used to take on our market, that impact has also changed. Right? So now we're in a different phase of market, and it's very important to understand what are the key triggers which will take our market ahead, or maybe which will keep our market under control, right? So before we deep dive into what are the key triggers that we have to watch for the upcoming sessions, let's quickly look at the indices. How did the broader market do today? So if we look here, we can see the top gaining sector was FMCG. FMCG, Realty, Private Bank, and Nifty Bank. They were among the top gaining sectors today, along with the media segment. And the top losing, we barely had some minor losses in pharma and consumer durables, which means the broader market strength is active. Sector mein to almost all the sectors are, with the market. But what about the broader market? What about the small cap? What about the mid cap companies? If you look at the all of the broader market indices, we are seeing all the indices were in green. Microcap with the top gaining sector with top gaining index with 1.06% gains. But overall, you're seeing a healthy rally in small cap, mid cap, large cap, overall our benchmark indices. So we can see that the market breadth is positive. The sector support is there with us, which means whichever direction the market would go, even if it's negative, they won't stay in negative for too long. Overall, the market sentiment is now positive, right? So the question now should be ki if everything is positive, if the market's breadth is positive, the sentiment is positive, then what do we have to look out for, right? So as usual, the number one thing that we have to look out for is the crude oil prices. Let's quickly look at Brent crude first. Brent crude के बाद then we'll look at the MCX crude. If you look at Brent crude, on the last session when we connected on Friday, Brent was down to 87. That it was below $90 because on Friday, Saturday, a ceasefire was announced. Ceasefire as in the war was ended completely. Ki, okay, no more war, everything is okay, we are friends, Strait of Hormuz is now open. Those were the talks that were going on Saturday, over the weekend. Friday, Saturday, the talks were Strait of Hormuz is open. Sunday, not even Sunday, by Saturday night, Donald Trump said that US is now coming up with their own blockade with the US Navy on Strait of Hormuz. And by Sunday, by the end of Sunday, Strait of Hormuz was closed again. So for some moments, crude oil was below $90. And we had discussed on Friday that agar crude 90 ke niche gaya, that is when that will be a huge positive, not just for Indian markets but for all the markets globally. So it was below 90, but then because the trigger that happened on Sunday on a holiday, on Monday we saw a huge gap up close to $100 on Brent. This tells us that Brent crude mein, earlier we used to worry at every $1 or $2 movement, but now that range has increased to $10 and $15. $10 movement in Brent crude is very nominal now. मतलब कुछ भी हल्का फुल्का हो जाएगा, $10 ऊपर नीचे, that is normal. What still we have to look out for is the $90 point. The $90 point is still important. हम जितना $90 के क्लोज रहेंगे उतना it is good for our market, and जितना we are closer to $100, that would indicate that the uncertainty is still there. And if uncertainty is there in the market, our not just our market, global markets won't do very well. Okay. So the point number one to watch here is crude. Right now it is sideways, but we have to watch the important zone of 90 to 100 US dollars. Coming to crude on MCX, I believe the same structure is there in MCX as well. We saw a huge fall on crude on Friday, and then on Monday we had a gap up. But the range that we have on MCX, the MCX crude range, is much tighter. And if we see, the higher end is much high, the lower end is much lower. So support and resistance, there's a huge gap between that. On Brent crude, we barely have $10 difference, but in MCX crude, we have approximately 1,000 point on both the sides. Resistance में the worry point कि अगर something goes wrong, what will happen next? That resistance point is at 9,456, and the point where everything would calm down, that is at 7,000 rupees. So 9,456 and 7,000. We all, and currently we are at 8,100. So आराम से we have 1,000 points on each side. So MCX पे तो we don't have to worry. But Brent crude is something that we have to watch out for. ठीक है? So crude is point number one. The second thing that we have to watch is, along with crude, we have to watch out for our USD INR pair. See, अगर USD INR simple relation है, if the Indian rupee is becoming more and more expensive for every dollar, right now it is 93. If it goes to 94, 95, 96, it is bad for our economy because we are losing the rupee value. Our markets are losing the rupee value, right, against dollars. Similarly, अगर rupee strengthen हो रहा है, 93 की जगह it is coming to 92, 91, 19, below 90, that is huge positive for us because our rupee is strengthening, so we are winning in terms of dollar terms, right? So the number one point we had to watch was for crude. The second thing we have to watch out for is the USD INR pair. How well is our currency doing? The stronger it is, the better it is for us. Okay. And the third thing that we have to watch out for, if you remember, 2 to 3 weeks ago, US Donald Trump, they had US and Iran basically, they had come down to a 2 week ceasefire, right? They were like, in 2 weeks, no fighting, no bombing each other, no bombing the allies, nothing like that. That 2 week deadline is ending tomorrow. So there is a very good chance that the healthy, happy faces that we have right now in the Indian market, that might really, turn around from tomorrow or maybe in this upcoming week. Because if the ceasefire duration is over, if they start fighting once again, the markets would again take a U-turn and we might see a downturn till 23,300, 23,000 in the upcoming days. Right? So these are the top three things that we have to watch out for: crude oil, our USD INR pair, and what really happens after the deadline is done tomorrow. Week of them.
That was honestly great insight, Arjit. In fact, one my main question for today's market session would be yesterday during the close. Almost it was tending to be negative. It was about to fall. We were expecting today to be gap down or to go down, but in fact we opened gap up today. So you've been telling that continuously the following sessions have been completely positive. So right now we need to look out for these three factors.
Absolutely. And the biggest factor for why we opened in green today and we opened with a gap up, there was a slight gap, 60-50 point gap, but still a gap is a gap, right? We did a gap up. We did cover that intraday. But why was the reason? The reason behind our positive momentum today was the already positive sentiment that we are getting it from the global markets. That's the main reason why we were positive. There was nothing fundamentally right that was coming in. We already had the numbers, and the numbers for HDFC and ICICI Bank, which was supposed to move the market. They came already over the weekend. We had a couple of good numbers today as well that we'll be talking about in a couple of minutes in this session. But apart from those results, the major heavyweights ka result that was done on weekend. Apart from that, the results that came today, they were not from heavyweights. And agar wo results, to be honestly, agar wo results nahi bhi aate, so our market would have still been positive because US market is at all-time high. Your European peers are doing very well. If you just look at the global markets for the Asian market, all of our markets are doing very well. Japan is on up almost 1%. Taiwan is 1.7% up. Korea is almost 3% up. So all of our European, Asian, and US markets are doing very well. Yesterday, the US market was red in its close, but right now the futures are positive. So overall, the sentiment from global markets is something which is also impacting our markets in a positive way. So that was the reason why we were positive today, despite the negative things overall.
Got it. Arjit, can we look at the global indices and then we'll jump to the stocks?
Sure. Let's begin with the French market, which is the CAC 40. Just a second. Right here. So if we look at CAC 40, we are still trading around the same important level that we had marked last week of 8,336 euros. Uh, Nothing major that we have seen in the market still now. We just have to wait for a moment when we cross this level and then we, reach out to the previous highs of 8,642. Until we are there to this level, tab tak ke liye there is nothing much we can expect from the French market. Looking at DAX, which is the German market, we have crossed the important level of 24,200. And here as well, our target is only for the higher number of 25,507, which was its previous high. Once we close or we close above the previous high, 25,507 euros, that is when we will have some fresh rally in the German indices, which is DAX. Until then, it's a wait and watch thing. We don't have to uh, really look into DAX and hope something best from DAX. Wait for the levels to come in. Once the levels come in, we'll talk about DAX once again. Talking about the UK 100 or the UKX, which is the European index, the UK index, FTSE 100. Here as well, nothing much that we can see. A double top is something that I can see, but again, that double top has failed right now. So let's look at what's really going to happen here in the upcoming trading sessions. The higher level again, it's 10,940, and on the lower end for the pattern to be successful, if this double top pattern is successful, that would be below 10,231 British pounds. So we are again in the middle of the range here. Once we see a rally on the either side, once the level is broken, that is when we can take a call for the European markets.
Got that, got that. Now, coming to the main highlight of this part, let's look at the stocks. Let's look at the banking sector first.
Sure. So before we dive into the banking sector, let's quickly look at the heat map for stocks for the today's
Mhm.
market. We're seeing SBI was closed with gains of 2.5%. We had JSW Steel with gains of almost 3%. Asian Paints, Trend, all of these were among the top gaining stocks today. Let's quickly look at the top gaining stocks on the benchmark as well. Nestle India, Hindustan Unilever, Trent, Bajaj Finance. These are some of the top gaining stocks along with ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank. Right now, talking about banking stocks, ICICI and HDFC Bank, they had their results live over the weekend, and I'm using Screener.in here. It's a free tool. The users who are watching this, if you want to look at the financial numbers after our session here, you can very well log into the portal and you can check it out. The numbers here indicate a very healthy set of numbers that I'd say for HDFC Bank. Not great, but they're healthy. You see net profit here. We have seen gains of around 9% here. 20,691 was the net profit number last quarter. This quarter they've increased it to 21,074 with some broadly 8.59% gain. Similarly, your profit before tax as well, same percentage of rise there. Financing profit is something which is to be noted here. Previous quarter we were down 12,899, but now in this particular quarter we are at minus 2,066. So this is something that we have to note here for HDFC Bank. Along with, if you look at the net interest income here, the interest income also, it's almost flat. All in all, I would see that the numbers are largely in line with what the expectations were from HDFC Bank. You already get a lot of expectations from multiple brokerage houses, so numbers are almost in line with the expectations, but they're not very good, decent enough. Markets are reacting positively to HDFC Bank because the numbers have met the expectations which were already there in the market. But if you just ignore the expectations, and if you look at the core business and the core numbers here from HDFC Bank, the numbers are not really that great on quarter and quarter basis. On annual basis, the numbers are quite impressive, especially if you look at the net profit. Net profit and PBT, these two numbers are really impressive, and the revenue growth, that is also solid. Around 3.5% YOY growth in revenue here. That is also good. Numbers are good but not great. But again, it's a large cap company. You cannot expect a lot of things from a large cap company, given that there are already small cap and mid cap companies that are growing rapidly in the market. Talking about ICICI Bank, along with HDFC Bank, ICICI and APFN results they had released over the weekend. Let's quickly look at the numbers. Quarterly numbers here. Financing profit, again, last quarter it was down 10,664. Now it is down even additional 4,000 crores down, minus 14,276. However, it has a very less impact on the PBT and the net profit. You've seen good growth here, right? Around 8.5% growth if you look at annually as well. Around 8% growth in the net profit here. The interest margins have also increased here. So I believe the numbers are relatively better than HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank. Right? Even if you see one more bank that has released its result, that just a second, it's a PNB Housing, right? PNB Housing has also released its number. Let's look at the numbers here as well, right here. Now, the reason why I chose PNB Housing here is because you can compare PNB Housing with HDFC Bank. HDFC Bank is the core business of HDFC Bank is to give out loans for housing loans, housing development. That it's a housing development bank, right? PNB Housing does the same job, but HDFC Bank is already not just a Nifty heavyweight, but it's a huge bank. Like it's a market cap is in multi lakh crores. PNB Housing is comparatively very small, but if you look at the numbers and if you compare the numbers are much better than HDFC Bank. You look at the revenue has okay, the revenue is flat quarterly, but if you look at financing profit, it has grown from 863 in last quarter to 883 in this quarter. Not just that, the financing margin has also increased by 8%. PBT again, massive growth there. Net profit, massive growth. Not just quarterly. If you look at the annual numbers here, even the annual numbers are doing absolutely amazing. You're seeing 19.2% gains in its net profit here. You see total income has risen by around 6.6%. So overall, see, how do you know if the company is doing very well financially? Is not just by looking at the net profit. Look at the revenue. If the revenue is growing, see, without revenue, every company is fail. अगर revenue grow नहीं हो पा रहा, if the company is not able to get revenue, doesn't matter how much profit the company is gaining, the company is not worth your investment. Here in PNB Housing, we are seeing that the revenue every year is constantly growing. Along with its bottom line, along with its top line, all the numbers are growing, which means this is a very good company to maybe invest your money. We just did a quick fundamental check based on the profit and loss account. In the further sessions, we will definitely deep dive into the balance sheet and other financial numbers, financial metrics of the companies. Now, before we like give out a recommendation for PNB Housing, let's quickly look at its chart as well. PNB Housing Finance Limited. You're seeing that the company was already in an uptrend, which means people knew that the bank is going to do well. And then when the numbers came out, we saw a huge gap up today and followed by a sideways move. Now, say if you have seen the numbers, if you believe in the stock a lot, and if you have to really invest your money in, the first target that you should be aiming for in PNB Housing is 1017. 1017. That is the first target that you should have. If that price is crossed, then your second target or the final target in PNB Housing should be this and this. So 1017, 1072, and 1114. These are the three targets that you should have for PNB Housing. Right? Now, I know one question that not just you but all of the users might have is we looked at HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, and PNB Housing. Right? If you look at the heat map here, HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank to theek hai, but what's up with SBI? Why did we see a huge rally in SBI?
Correct.
Well, उसके numbers अभी release नहीं हुए हैं, but SBI has given a very good management call. So the management really released a statement. It was there in the news today that SBI targets a balance sheet size of 25% of India's GDP by 2030. Now that is a huge statement. If a public bank says कि इंडिया की जीडीपी का 25% हमारा बैलेंस शीट साइज होना चाहिए, you can imagine at what level is the management thinking. If the management is at that level, how will they motivate their employees to work so that they can have their revenue in line with their expectations? And galti se, if that happens, you'll see SBI flying high like on cloud nine. You look at SBI, it's right now at triple at 1111. If that comes true, if the goal that the management has in their mind to achieve by 2030, even if the step one happens in upcoming quarter, you will very well see SBI at 1234. Wow, what a number, 1234, and at 1300 in the upcoming days very soon. So big targets coming in for SBI. If the management commentary really performs, if the bank really performs, you'll see these targets coming in SBI as well. Keep it up.
Got it. Arjit, now coming to your favorite section of the video, let's look at the open interest.
For sure. Let's quickly look at the open interest and look at where the markets might be tomorrow. So we're seeing here, this is the 21st April. Let me just change it. Today was Nifty expiry, so that again led to huge speculation in the market. This is the next week expiry we're looking at. Today is 21st, and we're looking out for 28th of April. Here you are seeing at the current strike price, which is 24,600, the PCR stands at 0.83. Once again, close to the oversold zone, which means that the market might rally in the next session. Not just that, if you look at the broader market PCR for 20th of April, broader market is standing at 1.15. 1.5 आता है तब हम लोग बोलते हैं कि okay, now it is time for markets to cool down. Until then, if the PCR is rising already, then it's still a good time for the markets to rally up. So 1.15 is the overall broader market PCR. Individual strike prices right now are trading anywhere between 0.83, 0.44, 0.3, 0.16. So it is below zero point 0.5 or close to zero point 0.5. So you can see a good rally in the upcoming days in the market in Nifty especially. To confirm this, we'll look at the OI buildup. The current strike is 24,600. So we'll look at 24,600 right here. And this OI buildup shows that there's long buildup happening in 24,600 call option. And there is short buildup happening in the same strike put option. Which means put में short coverage, put में short buildup है मतलब people are selling the put options, which shows here in the OI chart that the put OI is higher, right? I believe the first session when we talked about all of this, this was very confusing. But now, slowly and gradually, it is the complicated stuff is now becoming easier for almost everybody to understand, right? So, what we can see here from why build up an option open interest is that in the upcoming trading sessions, we might see the target of 24,700 that we had marked in the last session. The 24,700 level will be achieved in the upcoming sessions. And I won't be surprised if we hit 25,000 if everything goes well. All of our eyes, all of our attention should be what really happens next in crude oil, what really happens with the USD INR pair, and what really happens with the ceasefire deal which is happening between US and Iran in the upcoming days.
Got it. And in fact, for users to understand it in a much easier way, they have to log in exactly at 4:30 now and watch these insights from you, where you will break down in such simple manner. Ajay, thank you so much for today's session. Let's reconnect tomorrow at 4:30.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.